Commissioner Garber, with that being said, with the 2026 World Cup hosted by the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, the season starting this week kicks off a 5-year path of continued prominence for MLS. The opportunity here is massive. Can you give us an idea of what you believe MLS might look like after 2026?
Let me talk a little bit, Charlie, about what we need to do between now and then. I say to our staff and owners, it's very rare for any business to have a defined moment years in advance where you know exactly where you will be. And particularly as so much is shifting with technology and how people are consuming content and the global economy, what we think today, who would have thought about NFTs and who would have been thinking about the way, consumers are now even engaging in collectibles. Imagine what that will look like 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. But we know in 2026, the World Cup will be in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. 2 countries where we have teams, and a country where we have a very, very close relationship, which is getting closer and closer. So our league will spend the next number of years working with our federations in the US and Canada and our friends down in Mexico to figure out what we need to do to make soccer the most powerful sport in North America. And then how could MLS and our local markets, our stadiums, our owners, and all of our partners be able to capitalize on that? And it's an exciting project. We know it's almost like we have the countdown clock in the office, Charlie. And we know every day, what are we doing to move ourselves that much closer to a very defined, special moment? It's about strategic planning. It's about partnership planning. It's about creating new ideas and new opportunities. So all of us are really pumped up and excited by it.
That was great. Thank you, Don. Now we'll open up for a few questions from the media. The first 5 questions will be Jim Fortuno from the Associated Press, Brian Strauss from Sports Illustrated, Felipe Cardenas from The Athletic, followed by Sophie Nicolau from Talk Sport, and Brian Sandalo from the Chicago Sun-Time.
Hi, this is Jim Fortuno with the Associated Press. I'd like to circle back real quick to Austin FC. Certainly you were watching them build their franchise. How challenging do you think it was for them to basically build this franchise from the ground up amid a pandemic? Part 2 of that is you were here just recently and you said that you felt like club had, quote, over-delivered. What did you mean by that?
Yeah. So, I think the 2 questions are related, Jim. Imagine building a team and have your run up to the launch of a franchise that will be part of the fabric of the community forever, and have all of the stress and uncertainty of the pandemic. They had to make commitments to developing the stadium according to their plan and economic forecasting before the pandemic existed. They had to finalize the St. David's training facility and make financial commitments to that, not knowing where the economy would work out and how things would ultimately progress in that market. So what did they over-deliver on? A great brand and that reflects the community. I gave a speech at the dinner the night that I was there about the intertwining of the 2 oaks, the community coming together with the club to build this team and to build this sport in a city that didn't have a lot of soccer history. That was a great brand. They put together a great ownership group, Jim. Anthony Precourt was not from Austin, and he went down there and he got great partners. He found Matthew McConaughey, he found Eddie Margain. They got 2 great corporate sponsors. Q2, in the middle of a pandemic, signed a naming rights for the stadium. Yeti, one of my favorite brands, the outdoor guy that I am, coming and sponsoring their jersey all during the pandemic, and then selling 15,000 season tickets. So it was really, really difficult. The pandemic made it harder. The over delivery is it seems so perfect for the city. It looks like Austin. It feels like Austin. It reflects the culture of the community. I was trying to think about how could I describe that stadium to a bunch of local people. Everything in Austin is about, your backyard. You have great barbecue in your backyard. You have music in your backyard. You have friends and family there. And that stadium kind of feels like it reflects that backyard culture. Over-delivered, excited for them. Hats off to Anthony Precourt, who, has done a wonderful job.
Brian Strauss.
Hey, thanks, Charlie. Hi, Don.
Yeah, good to hear from you, Brian.
Thanks, man. Sticking with a theme, I guess. On the surface, it just seems kind of storybook what's going on in Austin and Columbus. 2 new stadiums. In one city you've got the champs reloading, and another you've got a waiting list, and all of the progress you just described. Looking back to 3 years ago, how unlikely or surprising is it that everyone has reached this point with these 2 markets? And what do you think were the primary factors or the primary people that made it possible?
Yeah. So, Brian, I think a lot about how sort of out of crisis comes opportunity, and out of challenge that really tests, leadership and their ability to sort of empower everybody around them to have optimism and confidence. By the way, at no time did that get more tested than during the pandemic. I would speak to owners a lot and say we have to spend most of our time ensuring that we can get through this, but some of our time ensuring that we could move forward. And I remember during all of the challenges that we had in Columbus and how complicated that was, believing that we would get through it and we would get out on the other end in a way that would be positive for every stakeholder. Positive for the fans, most importantly in Columbus and ultimately in Austin. Positive for the 2 cities. Positive for our league. And it wasn't easy. We took a lot of bullets, if you will, a lot of shots from a lot of people. And there was a lot of tension during that process. But almost everyone who was involved showed leadership. The elected officials showed leadership. The mayor, Alex Fisher, who is a guy that in the beginning I probably didn't get along with so well, and now I'm a buddy of his, and I think without Alex's stick-to-itiveness and with his creativity, we're not here today. The courage that Anthony showed to get through this and ensure that he was managing the transition properly, and then what could I say about the Haslams? To be able to have a brand new ownership group come into a city connected to their other investments that they have in Ohio, and to build a state-of-the-art facility, have a team that they took to the championship. While I don't know that everybody will ever look at the commissioner like that locally and feel great about it, that's okay. But I know that everybody went through this and feels really, really good about the outcome. I remember being on the field with Jimmy and Dee and saying to them, hey, you should really cherish this. Not that many owners come in and after a year, they're lifting, the Phil Anschutz trophy. But I think they're going to have a great team. They're going to have a great stadium. They're going to have a great fan base to build. And I know I feel the same way about what we've been able to achieve in Austin. The most complicated thing that I've ever had to chart through, but thanks to a lot of people who work really hard, we're in a good spot. And I feel very, very happy about that.
Felipe, your line is now open.
Thank you, Charlie. Good afternoon, Commissioner. How are you?
Good. Good to see you, Felipe.
Likewise. So I had the opportunity to speak with your counterpart in Mexico, Mikel Arriola, president of Liga MX. He's very bullish on the possibilities and the opportunities that will present themselves between 2 leagues to play closer together. Like you just mentioned, the relationship is getting closer and closer. Could you expand on that? And does the fact that both leagues are coming out of a very difficult 2020 financially, does getting closer together, working closer together to perhaps recoup revenue lost from 2020, does that accelerate Major League Soccer's plans to work in conjunction with Liga MX?
It's a good question. I don't think the momentum in the partnership is affected by the pandemic because we've been working on it for so long, and we continue to try to find the right way to deliver a value for fans and for partners that could, in many ways, also work with CONCACAF so that this region can stand toe-to-toe with the rest of the world. That's really what our objective is. There's no reason why this region, North America and CONCACAF overall, shouldn't be as strong and as valuable as CONMEBOL, as CAF in Africa, or as UEFA in time. And the only way to really do that is to create meaningful competition amongst its top clubs, no different than you see in Europe or you see in South America. And we got to walk before we run. And that's what Leagues Cup is. That's what Campeones Cup is all about. That's what our mutual commitment to CONCACAF about trying to get the right schedule and the right engagement and the right opportunities with the Champions League. And as we see more and more value coming out of that, ultimately, I think we could move closer and closer to the kinds of things and kinds of relationship that everybody's looking for. That's meaningful competition. I'm excited about our conversations with them about an expanded Leagues Cup. I'm excited about what a Campeones Cup could look like when more and more people are paying attention to our winner and their winner playing in a tournament. I mean, in a championship format. So the future is bright, and we're going to continue to be committed to working together.
Sophie, your line is now open.
Cheers, Charlie, and thanks, Commissioner Garber, for taking my question.
Thank you, Sophie.
One day when you hang up your boots, being commissioner of the league, and you sit and reflect on your own legacy, what do you think will be your single greatest achievement and your proudest accomplishment?
Well, it's an interesting question, Sophie. It's funny. Particularly now, we're thinking more about what we need to do over the next, 12 and months, and then leading up to the World Cup. Than sort of thinking back on what the legacy would look like. If I had to come up with one thing, though, I remember early on when I came into this job. It's now 22 years ago. I thought that we needed to build a soccer nation in the United States. It was before we had teams in Canada, so it really would be soccer nations in the United States and Canada, and to build a professional soccer culture with teams that matter in the community, with great facilities, and with a supporter culture that would be a real identifiable brand, if you will, for our league. And I think we're getting there. People care about Major League Soccer, whether it's the league itself in the U.S. and Canada or it's our clubs. We've got buildings we can be proud of, that as training facilities that we could be proud of. I was with David Beckham in Miami. He said that their training facility could rival any in the world. And I was proud of that. I was even a bit surprised by that. But it really is about culture. It's about mattering. And when I do leave this, I'd like to think that I've been able to lead a team of people, the league, and a team of people at the clubs, along with players that have built something that will be memorable and that will be identifiable in the broader soccer or football culture around the world.
Ryan from the Chicago Sun-Times, your line is now open.
Hey, Don. Good afternoon.
Ryan.
Hi. Good afternoon from Chicago. Thanks for doing this. Entering the 2020 season, the Chicago Fire put a lot into their franchise on the business side. You were there for the announcement in 2019 that they were moving to Soldier Field. It looked like they were tracking to fill Soldier Field for their home opener last year, and then the pandemic hit. So how did the Fire kind of recover the momentum they had on the business side entering last season? And how did, coming off of, frankly, what was a lost year for them through no fault of their own. So how did they rebuild that momentum they had in an environment that's still sort of uncertain because of the pandemic? And how important is that for the league to reignite a Chicago market that is needed to be reignited for a while?
Yeah. Well, listen, it was disappointing and even heartbreaking when the pandemic hit and they couldn't fill that stadium, which they had plans to do, and I believe they would have done. It would have been a great relaunch of the Chicago Fire, leaving Bridgeview and going down to Soldier Field. What is empowering is Joe Mansueto is so focused. He is so engaged, and he and his staff are very, very, very mindful of recapturing the momentum that they had going into 20 and being able to show the entire league and the soccer community, both in Chicago, in that part of the country, but around North America, that the Chicago Fire can be really, really relevant in one of America's most important cities. And I believe that they will be able to do that. It starts with players, and then it starts with their brand. And as you know, they've been working on that. And then it starts with knowing that Soldier Field can be a great place to hold large-scale soccer events. And we've seen this with international events. We saw it early on in the history of the Chicago Fire, and I believe that we'll be able to see it once again when that team comes out of the challenges of 20 into a more empowered or more exciting 2021. I will say that, and I haven't been asked this question yet, we have new health and safety protocols. We are very, very hopeful about getting our fans back into stadiums, particularly also in large stadiums, doing it in a very safe and protected way. Hopefully, as more and more people get vaccinated, and I encourage everybody in the U.S. and Canada to do so, people will be coming back to our stadiums, and you're going to see lots and lots of people going to Chicago Fire games.
Kyle, your line is now open.
With Sacramento's bid to join the league, and also where RSL's sale is the process. Thanks.
Kyle, I think I missed the first part of your question. Maybe you could repeat it again.
Yeah, the first part was if you could provide an update where things stood with Sacramento, and then the RSL update as well.
Sure. So, on Sacramento, I'd call this the expansion project there leading up to this season as a COVID casualty. We had a lot of momentum. We were working very closely with Ron Burkle and with Mayor Steinberg, who is a guy that I'm very friendly with, working with other local leaders and partners to launch, a great new team in Sacramento. Ron Burkle's a good guy. And, he had to face enormous economic challenges that were created by the pandemic, with costs rising dramatically with the rail yards project and other factors that created pressures on him that ultimately had him decide to walk away. But there's still a lot of energy in Sacramento. It's a good soccer market. Mayor Darryl Steinberg is very focused on trying to put another ownership group together. We're going to work with him to see what can be achieved. If another group can come together and reach an agreement with the city and with others to be able to bring a team there. But right now there are other markets that we're looking at, and people are, I'm sure, expecting that, whether that be Las Vegas or San Diego, or whether it be Phoenix. And we'll see where all of them, how all those develop to see who can be our 30th team. In Salt Lake, we've been working hard with local investors to, and there's been a lot of momentum and activity there to see who might come together to try to purchase that team. All that being said, the team is in great hands. We have a terrific person, John Kimball, running that club, reporting into the league office. He was involved in the team in the early years of Real Salt Lake, but I'm optimistic. Great market, great brand, two terrific facilities, their training ground, and Rio Tinto. So I'm very optimistic of what will come to fruition, hopefully by the end of the year in Salt Lake.
The next 4 questions will be asked by Andy Diosa of Yahoo Sports, Michelle Kaufman from Miami Herald, Jeremy Filosa from Radio 98.5 Sports in Montreal, and Katie Peralta from Axios. Andy, your line is now open.
Thanks, Charlie. Hi, Don. How's it going?
Hi, Andy. Great. Thank you.
Don, circling back a little bit to Austin FC, you have mentioned already all of the great things they've done to build up that club, and obviously haven't been able to play a game yet. What do you expect realistically from them on the field, knowing that their first game is here in LA against LAFC, which it seems kind of like a tough task for them, but then you think back to what Miami did, being able to come here and play that game, and you were obviously in attendance and said that, the crowd support was amazing, and everybody said that here in LA. Is the pairing of those teams for that inaugural game, Austin, kind of coincidental, or kind of just like them wanting to follow the model of that success?
I think it's more just trying to get a great matchup for network television and trying to create good stories with your opening game. Obviously, I'll be in LA and then I'll fly overnight and I'll end up in Miami, 2 network games, and we're excited about that. Listen, it's a tough matchup, and it's always tough to be a first team. I tell all new owners, it is very difficult to crack the code. And we saw the challenges that Toronto had when they launched their team before they were able to achieve success. And just Orlando is another example of that. You have to expect that you just can't come in here and snap your fingers and expect to be an MLS Cup champion. It's a difficult league to be successful in. I can't make a prediction on how they'll perform on the field. Josh Wolf is an experienced guy and learned at the side of Greg Berhalter, a very, very successful coach. Claudio Reyno has built a club with NYCFC and also a very experienced guy. They've made good decisions. So hopefully they'll, have a good team on the field. But winning isn't a sales strategy. You have to build your brand and you got to be engaged in the community. And if they do that, they'll have great fan support.
Michelle, your line is now open.
Hey, Don.
Hi, Michelle.
I'm happy to hear you're going to be in Miami 13 months late, but better late than never, right, for that game.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about if there is an update on the Blaise Matuidi contract investigation thing, and do you expect that to be resolved by the start of the season this weekend?
It will be resolved by the start of the season. The Inter Miami will be roster compliant by the start of the season, as will all 27 teams. But the investigation is ongoing. It's wrapping up, Michelle, and we could expect in the next couple of days, we'll be announcing what our findings are.
Jeremy, your line is now open.
Thank you. Bonjour from Montreal, Commissioner Garber. Thanks again for taking my question. My question is, it's a subject that comes up at this time of the year, every year. It's been difficult for members of the media to give fans the information that's necessary because, for example, in Montreal, we were not able to watch any of the preseason games. Is there an appetite for the MLS, especially with the new television contract coming up soon, to be able to allow fans and members of the media to have access to these preseason games, maybe organize it in a better way that we can have access to them and especially share this information out there? Because it's been very hard to create a buzz up here and trying to get people to know this new team without being able to see anything at all. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's a great point. It's a great suggestion. And you will see that in our new television deal that we will have those preseason games streamed and you'll see more access to them, in the future. It's a valid point, and it's one that's not lost on us.
Katie, your line is now open. And following Katie, we'll have Rob Woolard of AFP and Michael Lewis from Front Row Soccer.
Awesome. This is Katie Peralta-Sola from Axio Charlotte. Good afternoon, Don. Thank you so much for taking my question today. So earlier in the past, you've lauded the development of new stadiums and noted that they keep getting better and more impressive every year. But as we know, Charlotte FC won't be in a new stadium next year, but rather in one of the oldest stadiums in the NFL, Bank of America Stadium. And of course, there's also Soldier Field, as you mentioned earlier, where Chicago will play. Can you explain a little bit about, first of all, what do you make of the renovations that'll take place in Charlotte? And how would you say they will poise Charlotte's home field to be, as you call it, like a cathedral level of facility? And what sort of advantages do you see in having teams play in some of these older facilities that are, of course, located in central downtown areas?
Yeah. So, it's a very good question. I think it goes back to the question that was asked earlier about, what does it all look like? What's the legacy look like? And I think the story in MLS is constantly trying to reevaluate our plan to ensure that we could make the right decisions and make the right investments to move the league forward. And it's not linear. The league's original plan had no soccer stadiums as a part of it. Then Lamar Hunt built Columbus Crew Stadium. And then we went and built some smaller stadiums around country. And then, look at what happened in Atlanta, where you have 60, 70,000 fans attending games. And that was really preceded by the incredible excitement in Seattle. And the Seattle story was about a joint referendum to get funding for a new downtown stadium. And the soccer vote helped push that referendum over the line. and look at the great success we have in Seattle on and off the field. So we're constantly trying to think about what are the drivers of success. One of the things that we sort of came to the conclusion, it is about location. Downtown stadiums really maybe trump the size of the stadium. And then you look at where we are in Kansas City or where we are in Austin. That stadium's not in downtown. It's arguably in the new downtown in the Domain area, which is very, very vibrant and lots of people who are working, living, and playing. So we continue to evolve our thinking. And teams and owners need to make the decisions that will ultimately work for their fans and create the formula for success that is driven by the need for relevancy. And sometimes relevancy is more about downtown than it is about the size of the stadium. And by the way, the two things that work in relevancy in our large football stadiums right now in Seattle and in Atlanta, they're downtown. So we made the decision in Chicago to move back to Soldier Field because we thought it would make the team more relevant, and I believe it will. You marry that with the commitments that Joe Mansueto as owner will make, and I'm convinced that that will be the formula for success. And then with Charlotte, it was very similar. You know, David Tepper and his team of people said, this is the place where we will be able to drive success. And by the way, they have 30,000 season tickets sold. And that in and of itself is going to speak to large, fan base. We played downtown in Nashville in our opening game. We had 66,000. They're building a large stadium that is just a mile or so from downtown. So all of this stuff, I think, is driven by what we think will make the team the most successful in the local market. The second part of the question is, David Tepper is a smart guy. His team is well experienced. They will make the renovations that they need to make as part of their expansion agreement to ensure that that stadium will be appropriate for an MLS environment. I've got a lot of confidence in he and his team, and you can see the evidence by fan support. I'm very confident we'll be successful there.
Rob, the line is open.
Hi, Don.
Hello there.
So, Don, I wanted to ask you about the conveyor belt of talent that has been produced recently by US Soccer. And I wanted to get your thoughts on how much of that is attributable to the partnership with the French Federation, started in 2013, I believe it was. And the second part of the question is, how comfortable are you about the fact that a lot of these players are heading off straight to Europe early in their careers? And at what stage would you like to see it? Would you like to see players remaining in the US?
Well, it's a balance, and it's interesting. I've not quite heard about the conveyor belt. It's an interesting, analogy or illustration of what's sort of happening with the numbers of players who are developing their careers here and then moving sometimes straight abroad, and many, many times through our academies and then abroad. Right now, the vast majority of them are coming through our academies, and I think that's a positive development. It speaks to them getting their legs. I mean, Brandon Aronson is an example of that. Plays in an academy, plays for the Philadelphia Union, and goes and is starting over in the Bundesliga. Tyler Adams, I can give you countless examples. But there are players that decide to stay. Jesus Ferreira, who just played for our national team, is an example of that. And Dallas has had two signings where both of those players decided to stay in Major League Soccer. So I think this is a living process. And I think at times we at the league and I think the media look at trying to take a picture of it in a moment of time and try to create a determination as that that's the future. And I think the beauty of MLS is it's living organism and how it evolves over time to create a dynamic that will work with us over a long period of time. You're right. In 2013, the French Federation relationship was an important one. And Greg Vanny as an example, Luchi Gonzalez, these are two guys that sort of went over there and learned the business with great coaching the coaches, if you will. But the academy rules started in 2007. We just needed to have better coaches and better academies, and we're seeing that pay off with the development of players. The last part is I think you will see, like many other leagues around the world, that some of the best players will come through the academy system and stay here. Some players will go overseas. Some of them will come back. Rubio's an example of that, who just came back to play. So I think you'll see a narrative that will evolve over time. So the story has yet to be, the final book is yet to be written.
And we'll conclude this session with Michael Lewis from Front Row Soccer. And just a note, last week, April 6th, was 25 years to the day from when MLS debuted in April 6th of 1996. And Michael has covered the league since before it started. So it's an honor to have you still covering the league. Your line is now open.
Thank you, Charlie, for the kind words. Don, great to see you again. Thank you.
Same here, Michael.
You could probably guess the subject of my question. You talked
I have no idea.
You talked about cathedrals of soccer, and I know NYCFC fans and the team are waiting to get their cathedral of soccer. Could you first, this is a 3-part question, by the way. Could you give us an update on the situation there? What are your personal thoughts of having to play in a baseball stadium 7 years into the team's existence? And what sort of message do you have for the fans as well?
Well, listen, nothing's changed, Michael, since the last time we chatted. The team continues to work hard on trying to get a stadium developed. And obviously that had delays with COVID. But, by the way, same for Michelle. Miami Freedom Park is a project that Jorge Mas and his group are laser focused on. And look at the facility that they're playing in temporarily. But we will get a stadium in Miami. It might take longer than we thought, but we'll get a stadium in Miami. And Michael, we will get a stadium in New York. And, I will say to the fans, you have a team that has, a great brand. You have ownership that loves the club. You have great success on the field. And I think the rivalry with the Red Bulls will continue to thrive and grow. And we appreciate their support and we appreciate their patience. Looking back years from now, people will forget the trials and tribulations of the stadium development process. I've been through it before in so many different markets, but we'll get there. I got a photograph sent to me by Jay Sugarman last night of he and I standing with then Vice President Biden, now President Biden, at the announcement of the new team. And it opened up playing in Veterans Stadium at that time and now has a beautiful facility. So these things take time, and I appreciate everybody's patience and support.
Well, that's it for this session. Thank you, Don. I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Don't forget, the owners panel is